Chrysler Corporation cars have long been noted for their excellent handling characteristics, and power steering plays an important role. Today's cars rely on a number of factors which provide the superior handling and responsiveness your customers enjoy. But in the event a problem arises, the power steering checks and adjustments covered in this session will determine whether the steering gear or other related components are the cause of certain power steering problems. The steering gear is a highly reliable component and should not be replaced until checks have been made on all other components which affect steering. Some trouble sources are external, such as improper front-end alignment, tires not properly inflated or balanced, radial tire pull, and loose front wheel bearings. Others are internal and can only be corrected by replacing or reconditioning the gear assembly. We'll concern ourselves with checks and adjustments which do not require steering gear removal. Before you take a test ride to check out a steering complaint, make a few simple checks of items like tires. They should be at the specified pressure. And torsion bars at their correct height. Check the condition of the hoses and the amount of fluid in the pump reservoir. Check the pump belt for proper tension. Don't forget to check the steering gear mounting for looseness and for any interference with other steering system components. Now you're ready for a test drive to verify the customer's complaint. When road testing, be sure to consider the wind conditions and the road slope, as each can affect steering. Once you've eliminated the other possible causes originating in the wheels, tires, front-end alignment, and suspension, you're ready to look at the conditions which can be solved by checking or adjusting the steering gear. Free play, poor returnability, vibrations, steering wheel oscillation, pull, lead, drift, directional instability or wander, lack of assist. Steering wheel free play is a lag in steering response which requires additional steering wheel motion to affect the direction of the vehicle. Poor returnability is a condition that hampers the automatic return of the steering system to the center position as the vehicle completes a turn. Vibrations and steering wheel oscillation are conditions which rotate the steering wheel slightly in one direction and then in the other direction, and occur especially at highway operation. Pull, lead, or drift may appear in various degrees, but they all generally describe the same condition, which is a tendency for the vehicle to move to either the right or the left without driver steering action. Directional instability or wander is a condition in which the vehicle travels or weaves slightly from one side to the other instead of maintaining a straight course. Lack of assist can be partial or complete and may occur in one or both directions. Its effect on power steering is increased effort in turning the wheel in the direction where the assist is lacking. Any of these problems can occur in an improperly adjusted or faulty steering gear. Steering gear corrections are not hard to make. For excessive free play and directional instability or wander, adjusting the sector shaft for proper steering gear mesh should solve the problem. First, disconnect the center link from the steering gear arm. With the engine running at idle speed, turn the wheel gently from stop to stop, counting the number of turns, and then halfway back. After loosening the adjusting screw lock nut, turn the screw counterclockwise until you can feel backlash while gently moving the steering gear arm. For 8-cylinder vehicles, you'll need a helper to do this job. This adjustment can be a little sensitive, so be sure you establish the backlash. Now, tighten the screw clockwise until the backlash just disappears. Continue tightening 3/8 to a half turn more. Then, torque the lock nut to 28 foot-pounds. Be sure to make this adjustment properly, as over-tightening will cause hard steering and poor returnability. Other causes of poor returnability are interference between the horn pad skirt and the steering column bearing housing, and any interference in the steering linkage. Reconnect the center link on the steering gear arm. Take the car for a road test And if the free play or wander remains, replace or recondition the steering gear, as the problem is probably internal. Incidentally, for vibrations or steering wheel shake, the steering system is rarely at fault. First, check the wheels and tires for dynamic balance. Then check both the wheels and tires for radial runout and for lateral runout. If okay, then adjusting the sector shaft to specifications may help. Again, do not, under any circumstances, over-tighten the sector shaft adjustment. Steering control valve centering can be a factor in correcting pull, drift, lead, and poor returnability from one direction. Here's why. The steering control valve has a sliding spool core with lands, which open or close the power chamber fluid ports to pump pressure. Normally, the control valve centers automatically when there's no turning force at the steering wheel, as in the straight-ahead position. No power assist is applied because both power chamber ports are open an equal amount. In a left turn, the lower land of the spool closes the lower port to inlet pressure and opens it to return flow, while the upper land opens the upper port to inlet pressure and closes off the return flow. This buildup of hydraulic pressure causes the piston to move, providing less steering effort. For a right turn, the same hydraulic assist action takes place, but the steering valve and power piston movements are reversed. If the control valve is not properly centered, then some hydraulic assist action is constantly applied to the right or left, causing pull in one direction and limited returnability. To determine if control valve centering is a factor in a vehicle with pull, drift, lead, or poor returnability from one direction, make this easy check. Start the engine and observe the steering wheel. If it kicks in the direction of the pull or drift, then proper centering of the valve should cure the problem. Centering the control valve is a simple on-the-car adjustment. First, loosen, then retighten the hold-down screws to 7 foot-pounds. Then determine in which direction the steering wheel kicks. When centering the control valve, always tap either the end plug or screws instead of the valve body to avoid jamming the piston. If the wheel moves to the right, tap downward to correct. If it moves to the left, tap upward. Gave it a little too much, huh? This time, tap it lightly. Then check to see if the valve is properly centered. If okay, tighten hold-down screws to 15 to 20 foot-pounds. Then recheck it again, as tightening the screws may offset it. On all 1977 models, the back pressure control valve body is straight instead of angled as in previous models. Except for the new one requiring a longer hose, the valves can be interchanged. Incidentally, a sticky spool valve can hamper control valve movement, causing directional instability or wander. Shake the valve to see if it moves freely. If not, replace it. When reinstalling a control valve, make sure the lever spring is installed with the larger end up. Then line up the hole in the valve spool with the lever in the housing. The valve should go on easily by hand. Forcing it could damage the lever or the valve and hamper operation. When you have lack of assist in only one direction, the problem usually lies in the steering gear. But when lacking assist in both directions, it could be either the steering gear or the pump. Performing a pressure test will determine where the problem lies. When testing, the fluid temperature should be between 150 and 170 degrees Fahrenheit, with the engine running at normal idle speed. Have a helper turn the steering wheel to full lock in one direction and hold momentarily, and note the pressure. Then have your helper turn the wheel all the way in the other direction and hold momentarily while you note the pressure. Check both readings against the pump specifications. If one reading is below the minimum specs, the steering gear is not functioning properly. If both readings are below the minimum specs, you can determine if it's the pump or steering gear by closing the valve momentarily and noting the maximum pressure. If this reading is less than specified, the pump is faulty and should be repaired. If reading is okay, then the problem lies inside the steering gear, so you'll have to replace it. When oil leakage is detected at the sector shaft and worm shaft, The oil seals can be replaced without removing the steering gear from the car. This information is covered in detail in the reference book. The power steering checks and adjustments we've covered will help you to correct many steering problems without removing the steering gear. But these checks and adjustments are just part of the power steering story. For more complete details on diagnosis and service, see the reference book and service manual.